What's up, family, friends, neighbors? If you don't identify as any of those three, give it time because I'm inviting you to Mr. Rodney's neighborhood. So I skipped a day again yesterday, but I'm going to get back on the horse here and do a video for us here at Mr. Rodney's neighborhood. And I had a question that was asked to me, and I'm going to read it so I don't get it wrong. But I had a question that stemmed from our video so far, and somebody said, I would love to hear you show people how to know what their purpose is and passion in life is. There's many of us that struggle with not knowing our God-given purpose. And this is somebody I've known for years and years, somebody who have definitely a certain amount of respect for, and person I had a relationship with. And I think it's very humble to ask that question. And you're going to hear me say some things in a lot of videos that almost sound repetitive. And it's because I have a passion point in life that I want people to realize that the purpose that they're looking for is probably right in front of them. And it's not something that's afar off, because many times we can be looking for the thing that's far off and we can miss the thing that's right in front of us. And we've already talked about the sower or the farmer who's plowing the field. And when he's plowing that field, if he keeps looking to the end of the line, his rows are going to get off. It's going to become crooked. And God can use crooked lines. There's a great series by my pastor. You can find it on YouTube called Crooked Lines, and just how God uses the crooked lines of our life to accomplish his will, which is fantastic and amazing. But how do you know your purpose? How do you know what you're called to? Everything I know I've learned, so I don't want to pretend like I've come up with a bunch of original thoughts, but I've just been exposed to some things that maybe some of you haven't, and so it will sound new to you. But my old pastor, he used to say, one of the ways you know if you're called to something is you're already doing it. You know, if somebody says, I'm called to pastor, but how do I get there? You'll know you're called to pastor when you're pastoring. And I'm not talking about pastoring on a church staff or in a full-time ministry position by title, but are you the captain of your basketball team? Do you lead the rec league? Are you concerned about people on your job? Do you take them aside and counsel them? Do you see how you can pray for people? Do you look to see how you could be a source of comfort when they're going through grief or when they're having doubts? Do you know good resources to point them to, like counseling or books or whatever? And if you're doing that in your workplace or your school environment, or your rec league or whatever it is you're doing, that's how you begin to know what you're called to do. So you want to find out what your purpose is. Look at what you're doing now, and what do you do with passion? What do you do exceptionally well that doesn't exhaust you? Now, you can get tired. I can I can preach a funeral. I can do some other things at the church. I could counsel a couple people, and I might come home and I'm tired, but rarely am I exhausted. When you are exhausted, either the grace is run out or you've become dull. Now, in Hebrews 5, he's challenging the believers that they become dull. And becoming dull is a process where you're overworking a knife. You know, I like to cook. And a sharp knife is everything. If your knife isn't sharp, you will work harder. And the harder you work with that knife, the duller it becomes. You have to sharpen it and you have to keep an edge on it. And so, what are you doing that you can do with an edge that almost happens seamlessly? And I'm going to tell you every time we talk about purpose that maybe your purpose isn't the platform you think it is. I think about the nurse in the hospital that I've seen so many times now have to deliver the news that a loved one has died, have to be able to go through the process seamlessly, yet compassionately, tell their resources and how to contact a morgue or a funeral home, and what the process is, and how long do they have to stay in the room with the loved one before they need to move them out and begin to process. You can't tell me that that's not a calling, that that's not a purpose. Maybe you sell shoes, and if you can have a person leaving your store feeling good, not just about their purchase, but feeling good, their feet feel good. They're going to have some confidence for the job interview. Their feet are going to stop hurting because they're on them all day and you gave them the right shoe. And in there, you were able to just make them laugh or make them feel comfortable with having to spend a little bit more money than they normally would. There's purpose in that. There is ministry in that. And there are things that appear grand. There are people who can go out and change a homeless situation in an area of town. There are people who can go overseas and dig wells and provide mosquito nets. But we can't equate purpose to only those grand ideas, because honestly, people tell me from time to time, I couldn't do what you do, but I can't do what that nurse does. I can't do what that funeral director does. I definitely can't do what my accountant does. My accountant is passionate about numbers. My accountant loves Jesus. My accountant is passionate about helping people manage their money, save their money, not get taxed more than they should. And I could never do that job. I could learn the math. I'm probably smart enough to go to school and get a degree in that if I worked hard enough. But I would never be as effective or as passionate as my accountant is. That's his calling. That's his function. That's his purpose. Building houses is purpose. Because you imagine if you don't put a roof on right, imagine you live in like Tennessee or Kentucky or Alabama where there's a lot of tornadoes and you don't put a roof on right. It can not just suck the roof off the house, it can suck people out of the house. And you can't tell me that that carpenter doesn't have purpose. The designer of that roof doesn't have purpose. I think we find purpose by doing what we're doing. And then if we identify it as exhausting us, taking a step back and saying, okay, what am I really passionate about that I don't mind working at? Because that's the other thing. The other misconception about purpose is that when you're in purpose, you'll never work again. And I know there's people who say that. They say, if you go to purpose every day, you'll never work again. No, I don't believe that to be true. The Bible says the hand of the diligent bears the rule. And in order to be diligent, I have to work. I have to work at my speaking skills. I have to work at my theology. I have to work on my counseling skills. I have to work on some organization. I have to work on how I talk to people. I have to work on being a good husband. The Bible says, husbands dwell with your wives according to knowledge. Well, in order for me to have knowledge of my wife, I have to work at it. And as she changes and her ideas and passions change, I have to be willing to adapt with that. But take a step back from whatever you're doing, if it's exhausting you, and say, where am I willing to work and work passionately at? And then when I work passionately at it, I see the results from it. That's how when you begin to find purpose. The other thing I want to say about purpose before this time runs out for this video is you may not always get paid for your purpose. You may have to work a job that you don't love, but then you have a side gig where you volunteer. I think about, there's a lot of pastors around the world and even in this nation who are bivocational. Think about the Apostle Paul. If you go study, he made tents and he preached the gospel. That might be a little bit further video, my next video, just to talk about that. But I want to tell you may not always get paid for your purpose, but find out what you're passionate about, what you're willing to work hard at, and what will produce results. And you will find your purpose. Hey, hope you enjoyed Mr. Rodney's Neighborhood tonight. See you next time.